Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Elizabeth. This is Reading Riley, where we like to read Riley, not take ourselves too seriously, and have some fun with books. And I'm starting another vlog, I guess.
1, 2, 3, funky.
I had this idea because I really wanted to read The Final Girls Support Group by Grady Hendrix. And then I realized there's another Final Girls book that I also want to read by Stephen Graham Jones, I think called The Last Final Girl. And then I was like, wait a second, Riley Sager has a Final Girl book too, which, full transparency, I have read this, but it's been so long and I don't remember it at all. So I'm gonna read all three of these. Not only are they all Final Girl books, but they all have red and white and black covers. And they're just, it's a vibe, it's a motif, it's a movement, it's a thing. We're gonna do the battle of the Final Girls. And we're gonna see which one is the best Final Girl book of all three of these. Oh, by the way, apparently I gave this 4 stars, but I do not remember this. I'm sure it'll come back to me as I read. All three of these authors are also very loved authors within the thriller horror community. It just seems like a really good idea to kind of battle it out, see who wins. So I started the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. For this book, I am actually buddy reading this with my friend Faatima. So I will plug her channel above, below, wherever. But she is such a sweetheart. She is over on YouTube at Faatima Rose. So check out her channel, show her some love. She is a writer. She's on AuthorTube. She does a lot of reaction videos. She also does some vlogs, things like that. So anyway, we're reading this together. I think we chose to stop at 3 checkpoints to check in. I am up to the first checkpoint and I don't think she has gotten there yet. So we're going to move on to another book while we catch up with her. But I will say for the first 8 chapters that I read of the Final Girl Support Group, I'm really liking this. I'm not getting the same, I don't know how to explain it. I've read 2 other Grady Hendrix books and I really liked My Best Friend's Exorcism. I did not like The Southern Book Club because of all of the gaslighting in that. And I also saw that in My Best Friend's Exorcism, but I didn't feel like it overwhelmed the narrative like it did in Southern Book Club. So I was actually able to enjoy his writing style. I think his writing style is great. I think it's great. I think his ability to write female characters is really nice. And I like that he likes to talk about social issues, which is something that I like to read about. If you've been following my channel, then you know that by now probably. But typically I don't like slasher movies. I can't say that I've ever read a slasher book. Have I?
I don't know.
I mean, The Only Good Indians is kind of, I guess. Sorry, my husband is on the roof. So we're following our main character, Lynette, I think is her name. And she is a final girl. And she is in this support group where they meet once a month with only final girls. Introduced to the story from her perspective, we start off in this actual support group. We're going around, we're getting the dynamics of each of these different characters. And I think the diversity between all of these characters is awesome off the bat. You have the one final girl who is like a Southern belle and she wants to be a debutante, and that's how she kind of deals with it. It's just like pushing herself into high society. Sorry, my dog is freaking out. And we have another final girl who her story gets made into a movie, a series of movies. And as a black woman, she's very upset to find that they have cast her as a white woman. So she sues them for the entire franchise, wins it over, and then uses the money from that to help other people, which is awesome. We have one final girl who is dealing with her trauma with drugs. And she's just deep into drugs. She can't be relied on, and that's how she is handling it. Another final girl who, because of whatever she went through, she's now in a wheelchair. She goes on Sally Jessy Raphael and tells her off because they don't have handicap accessibility. And she's saying, well, if you really care about me, then you would make this handicap accessible. Off the bat, with all of these women, we're talking about race, we're talking about ableism, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about just all kinds of issues that I love. And then our main character, Lynette, the way she handles what she's been through is she is overly cautious about everything. She has a backup plan and a backup plan and a backup plan. She's like a, what do you call them? End of the worlder people. I don't know what they're, survivalist type thing. In her apartment, she has special doors and special locks, and she has a secret car. She doesn't put anything online. She hides her identity. Nobody knows her address of the final girls, but she's put it in an envelope for one. They check in every month or every day at a certain time, and if she doesn't check in, she's allowed to open the envelope and then come help her because that means something's in trouble. I like Lynette because she's giving me very much ultimate true crime girl. I listen to a lot of true crime, watch a lot of true crime. What I take away from that is what not to do in situations. You learn little tricks here and there, little tricks to keep you safe, to keep you alive as a woman. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to do these things. We have to be aware. We have to be hyper vigilant about things that keep us alive because people try to kill us. Men try to kill us. So she knows every trick, every tip, but she's also really neurotic. Her character is really entertaining. I think because she's so lonely and because she isolates herself so much, she ends up personifying the things around her in her home. She has a plant that she calls Fine for final, but I kind of get the impression that when she says it, she's like, I'm fine, I'm fine. She talks to the plant like it's her best friend. The plant is her best friend. So what happens is they're at this group and then one of the final girls doesn't show up, and then they come to find out that they are being hunted down. So it is like the epitome of the last final girl of the final girls. There's this question of when you're in a situation with a bunch of other final girls, you got to be a final girl because you looked out for yourself, because you protected yourself. But when you're among a group of final girls, they have kind of made this unspoken agreement where they look out for each other. Now we have to look out for each other, but then we have this dynamic of her being like, well, should I help them or should I just make sure I stay alive? Because she's constantly been in that mindset of stay alive, stay alive, stay alive. So it's really interesting so far. One thing I don't like though is that she's interacting with her group therapist's son, who is a 26-year-old, and he's written like a 5-year-old. So I don't really understand that because he's supposed to be like a full-grown 26-year-old and his dialogue is so young. That's why I'm at for Final Girls. I've started reading The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones. Now, Stephen Graham Jones is another author that I am getting into. I've read one of his books, and that is The Only Good Indians, and I loved it. I read it a few months ago, gave it 5 stars, thought it was amazing. So I'm really interested in reading more of his works. And this book, I don't know if it's a novella, but it's very short. I'm obsessed with his point of view as a writer. I think I'm about a quarter of the way through it. It's really interesting because it's presenting like, how to explain this? It's like someone is watching a 1980s John Hughes final girl film and explaining it to you as they're watching it. Even to go as far as saying like outside of the shot, you hear a man giggle like an idiot, or like outside of the frame where you hear this happening. So it's very much like he's walking you through a movie. I'm not sure, like Stephen Graham Jones is a horror writer. So I'm assuming there's going to be some horror in here, but as of right now, it feels like a mockumentary. Like every single trope that you could ever think of is in this. We're in a high school. You've got the jocks, you've got the cheerleaders, you've got the final girl. A bunch of these high schooler kids got killed, and the final girl, what is her name? Lindsay, I think, was coming back to school and sitting on her throne and telling them all what happened and giving them words of inspiration. And there's commentary from these other girls in the school who are just over it. Of course she did this. Like, she has a horse and the horse is blind, and at the end of the scene she like touches her face to the horse so that he knows that it's her, and they ride off into the sunset. It's just so tropey. It's so satirical. I'm having fun with it off the bat. I think it's hilarious. I don't know where the actual horror is going to come in, because right now it just seems like a spoof. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I've been talking too long, so I'm going to leave it at that, and I will get back to you after I've done a little bit more reading.
If I could take you up in tell me I'm the only one that you love. Life could be a dream, sweetheart. Life could be a dream. Plans would come true. And my whole life loving you. Life could be a dream, sweetheart. Hello, hello again. Shaboom, and hoping we meet again. Oh, life.
Whose kid is this?
I don't know whose kid it is.
Huh?
Who are you talking about?
Which fucking child is this, man?
Morning. Mornings, buddy. Okay, So I finished The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones. This book started out at the beginning with this kind of omniscient narrator that is explaining this movie to you. So it's a movie within a book. First I was like waiting for that to for the scene to end and it to go into the actual story. That doesn't happen. That's just how it is. Stephen Graham Jones just had to be different. And I think it's definitely a unique way to write a book. However, it makes you feel disconnected from the characters. I didn't connect to this story like I wanted it to. This is one of those reads where I felt like my actual reading experience wasn't awesome as I was going through it, but upon reflection, I do feel like I understand its worth and I understand that I gained something from it. It was very satirical, almost like a Slasher 101 class. Every single trope, every single funny thing that happens in slashers happens in this, and it's just so meta because it's just talking about itself the whole time because they're all aware of the fact that they're in this slasher movie as it's playing to the audience. It's definitely different. It definitely has that Stephen Graham Jones twist, although my reading experience wasn't the greatest, so I really don't know what to rate this right now. I definitely connected with our final girl. I liked her a lot. I didn't care for really any of the other characters, and they were blending all together for me. The killer in this story is someone wearing a Michael Jackson mask, so they call him Billie Jean. And then you have all these other characters within this high school. It's very high school tropey. You have the virgin, you have the person with the traumatic past and very specific qualifications that you need in order to be a final girl. Some of that was news to me. Calls back to the Halloween movies, Scream, Freddy Krueger, that kind of vibe. Absolutely. So if you're into that stuff, you'd probably love this book.
Denny, that's not the most flattering view I've ever seen. Oh, thank you. Oh, still the same view.
I have been listening to this all day while I catch up on laundry, and I am, let me see, I am about 60% of the way through it. So far for this book, Final Girls by Riley Sager, I like it. This is the one, remember, that I have read before. Couldn't remember a thing about it. It wasn't until maybe 40 or 50% into this that I started kind of getting inklings. I still don't know what happens, but I have two options of two forks in the road of where I think it might be going. So I'm not sure, but I'm enjoying this a lot. We're following our main character, Quincy Carpenter. She is a final girl trying to get on with her life after this event at Pine Cottage happened where her and some of her schoolmates were in the woods in this cottage celebrating a birthday, and they were all massacred except for her. She was saved by this police officer who was in the woods looking for someone who had escaped from a nearby asylum, maintains a good relationship with her. He checks up on her. She's got a boyfriend who's a defense attorney. She's like a baking blogger. I actually really enjoy that part of it where she's talking about baking a lot. There are two other final girls that all kind of gained this infamy within that time. They find out at the beginning that one of them has died by what looks like suicide. So that's the gist of this book. I just read Survive the Night maybe a month ago, so I can't help but compare this to that. I do feel like this is better written than Survive the Night. Although I still liked Survive the Night. I know some people didn't, but I did enjoy it. I think I gave it 4 stars. You know, I really don't know how to judge these books because this one is more of a thriller than horror. Even though it's called Final Girls, I would call this a thriller. This isn't a slasher. Whereas the other two, I think, are slashers. But I guess this could be too. Only one person's died though. But it's really fast paced. I very much sympathize with this main character. So far, I like this better than The Last Final Girl. I think it's just more my style. The Last Final Girl was definitely very strict slasher and more of a satire, very much for horror slasher fans. I am still working on Final Girl support group as well, so I'll be intermingling that. I've got the next few days with relatively little to do. I'm gonna get reading and do all that stuff. All right, goodbye.
Happy birthday to you. See if you can get them all in one breath.
He's 5. Alright, y'all, I am going to make some chicken salad today, and I'm going to tell you about the Final Girl support group that I'm reading. Denny is going to be desperate as fuck and not leave me alone until there's no food left. If you're curious, this is like the easiest chicken salad ever. I literally just buy a rotisserie chicken that's already cooked, take it off the bone, cut it up, and then I cut up some celery and red seedless grapes and mix it all together with some mayo, salt and pepper, and then I like to eat it on a croissant, which is the best. I tend to go heavy on the celery and grapes just because I like extra stuff, but this will be a big portion. It'll last probably like a week, and I'll eat it for lunches. So it's basically like food prepping, I guess. Anyway, so let's get into the Final Girl support group because I am probably 80% into it. And I think I mentioned this before, but I'm buddy reading this with Faatima. I think we have figured out who the killer is. I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to spoil anything for you if we are right, but I'm pretty sure we've got it figured out. I'm really enjoying this. I like Lynette as our main character, as our final girl. I think she's really relatable. She's flawed, she's damaged, but she makes some bad decisions, but then she, I think, comes to her senses and changes her mind and like wants to be a better person, wants to live her life in a way that she deserves to live it. And so, what do I do with this? So yeah, I am liking it. But listen, I've been having some second thoughts about this vlog in general. And not that I'm not enjoying these books, but I feel unqualified to rate these books because I feel like I don't have enough experience in this genre as a whole, and I kind of am having some like imposter syndrome going on because I'm like, well, what makes a good slasher movie? What doesn't? So I've been kind of asking around to figure out kind of what the basis of judging these should be, because I have no idea. Okay, so I talked to Katrina Brown over on her channel. Go check her channel out. She's also into a lot of thriller and horror. Gotten a lot of great horror recs from her. And asked her opinion about what she thinks makes a good slasher. She gave me a really thoughtful response. She said she hasn't read a ton of slashers, but she seems to be enjoying it when it doesn't take itself too seriously. So I'm wondering if, because that Stephen Graham Jones one that I read definitely didn't take itself too seriously. And I'm wondering, I guess I didn't realize that was kind of a marker of the slasher genre. She said it doesn't take itself too seriously and there's plenty of humor and satire. Also, when you kind of care about the protagonist. So I think that's a good level to judge this on. Do I care about the protagonist? And then she says the killer's motivation seems justified in some way. And then a twist ending. It's always fun as well when there's a lot of really elaborate kills and action. Okay, so these are just some points we want to think about moving forward for these so that I'm not kind of butchering, pun intended, this genre. Oh, making a mess. I'm gonna slash the shit out of this celery! Ah! Okay, so I just got to this part in the book where it talks about this really poignant discussion that I think Colleen actually pointed on or touched on as well when she did her review of this at Little Ghost Creations. They flat out said, what does it say about us that so much of the media that we consume involves the killing of women? And that just really struck me. It actually gave me chills because it does. They say, oh, well, you know, we leave the theater and close the book or whatever, and then the women's dead bodies are just there, left, and we go on with our lives and we chit-chat about the plot twist with our girlfriends, and we do, especially we do, because, you know, we talk about thrillers mostly over on this channel anyway. I should say I. Not sure how I feel about that, but it's definitely making me think and look inward. So I just want to mention that. All right, there you have it. My chicken salad Sammy. Very excited for this. You're not getting any, Fo? Who do you think you are? I just finished the final girl support group. This is my favorite Grady Hendrix as of yet. It was the farthest from and the closest to my style at the same time. In the sense that this is a slasher, so it's definitely outside of my comfort zone, but also the way it's written did remind me of like just a regular, not a regular, but like a good thriller. And we have the social commentary without all of the gaslighting, thank God. Although, I mean, I suppose there is some gaslighting in here, but it's not the kind that triggers me. It triggers me when it's in like a domestic situation. But okay, first of all, there was a twist. It was who I thought it was, but it also wasn't who I thought it was. We talked about how Lynette was so distanced from people, from interactions, other than the women in the support group, and even then she wasn't as open and honest with them as she could have been. One of the other girls was like leaning over her and consoling her, and she was like, I saw a hair on her chin, and I realized that I've never seen anybody this close before. And then she realized that nobody had ever seen her this close before. And I think something clicked in her brain and allowed her to realize that life is not just about survival, but that living means more than that, more than just breathing in and out. And I really like that. This is a more sophisticated version of a slasher, which I would expect from Grady Hendrix. She talks about how life is hard. Like, it's hard. And it just keeps going and going and going until it doesn't. The takeaway for me from that was, yeah, life is hard, but we still need to push through. We still need to hold ourselves accountable for making life worth living. And like I say about mental health, it also applies to life in general, that whatever your circumstances, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. I think that is a really good takeaway from this story. I really enjoyed it. Definitely a contender. Tonight's dinner, flautas. Finished Final Girls. I liked it. I did kind of remember some part of the twist, but not all of it. And so it was exciting for me to kind of go through that twist again and still be surprised by it, because the ending has like a double twist. It's like a twist within a twist, and I thought it was really well done. I liked our protagonist. I had a good time. It was a good reading experience, but you know what I've been thinking? Why did I not read My Heart is a Chainsaw instead of The Last Final Girl? Because that one is, from what I'm hearing, also a Final Girl book. But I guess it doesn't have the title. It doesn't fit in aesthetically like the other three do, although I think it is black, white, and red. Part of me kind of wants to read that too and add it to this vlog, but no, I'm not going to do that. Oh, I watched Dark Places, the movie. Did you guys know there was an adaptation of Dark Places? I did not know. It stars Charlize Theron. It has a really shitty Rotten Tomatoes review. It has like a 23% or something on Rotten Tomatoes, which I don't understand because I thought it was really good and I felt like it followed the book really closely. I thought it was really well done. And I never knew there was an adaptation for it. That came out in like 2015, I think. So I guess that was before I got into Gillian Flynn and got into thrillers in general. So I guess that makes sense why I missed it. We're going to dinner tonight for the little one's birthday dinner with the family. So she's gonna hang out with her cousins and all of that. So, and I just got back from brunch with my best friend for her birthday. So that's why I'm actually dressed today and not in yoga pants and a t-shirt, which feels good. It feels good to actually get dressed up every once in a while, because I don't really have an in-between. I have dressy and I have yoga pants. That's for another time. I will check back in when I figure out my ranking system, and we will go through all of that to finish out this video. Okay, it is down to the final results. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you are on the edge of your seats. Shortly, your questions will be answered. Let us decide a winner, shall we? So, okay, here's what I did. Okay, you're gonna think this is really nerdy, but I spent 5 hours studying for my statistics class last night. Not even studying, doing my homework. Homework, 5 hours, and I didn't even finish it. Anyway, I have learned how to compute a weighted mean. which basically is a grade point average. So we are going to give each of these books a grade for 5 different categories. I know earlier I mentioned 4 categories, but I've added another one as well because I felt like we needed it. I should preface these categories with the fact that these are not what I think of these books. These are what I think, from the information that I've gathered, books of this specific slasher subgenre of horror should be rated by. This is not the way I rate the books personally, but how I think they should be rated within the slasher genre. I'm making this too complicated. I know, but you know, why the hell not? So the categories are, drumroll please. Number 1, it doesn't take itself too seriously. Number 2, did I care about the main character, the final girl? Number 3, were the killer's motives justified? Number 4, how was the plot twist? Was there a twist ending? And number 5, the one I've added on because I felt like it was necessary in this category, is the kills. Were there elaborate kills? Were the kills interesting, new,
etc.?
I've given each of these 3 books a letter grade for each of these categories from A to D. And the way I am calculating that is by giving them each a value. They get 4 points for an A, 3 for a B, 2 for a C, and 1 for a D. And then I've also added weights to each of these categories. I think some of these are more important than others, so I've broken it up into percentages. Number 1, doesn't take itself too seriously. I have weighted that at 15% of their ultimate grade. Number 2, caring about the main character. I think this is important, so I gave that a 25% towards its total grade. Number 3, the killer's motivation. I gave that 20%. Number 4, the plot twist. I think this is very important as well, so that will be worth 25% of their total grade. And number 5, the elaborate kills. I feel like this is just an extra and a fun thing that should be included. I gave that a weight of 15%, adding up to 100% of their final grade. So let's go through and tell you what I graded each of them. Final Girl Support Group. Category number 1, doesn't take itself too seriously. I give this a D, not because I'm mad that it took itself seriously, but it did. We had a lot of social commentary about social issues that are happening, which I love, I appreciate. But it was not your typical satire that I think people expect from a slasher book or movie. Category number 2, did I care about the main character? Yes, I gave this an A. Category number 3, the killer's motivations were justified. I gave this a B. I felt like there was meaning behind it, but I didn't necessarily fully believe it, so I gave that a B. Number 4, plot twist, also a B. I did enjoy the plot twist, however, it didn't make the most sense. I felt like it was more for shock factor. I didn't understand the motivations behind the twist, so let's just say that. But I did enjoy it, so it gets a B. And number 5, elaborate kills, also a B. There were a couple in there that were pretty interesting, but did not blow me away. Next, we have The Final Girls by Riley Sager. Category 1, I gave this a C because, again, there were a few lighthearted moments, but it absolutely took itself more seriously than I might expect. Category number 2, did I care about the main character? I gave this an A. Yes, I very much enjoyed our main character for this book. Number 3, for this, I gave a C. And that is because I don't think they explored the motivation for the killer at all. Not that that sticks with me anyway. And so I felt it was lacking in that category, so I gave it a C. Number 4, this one I really enjoyed. It was a double twist, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I gave it an A. Number 5, this one I felt like there were actually relatively few kills. It gets a C. And then moving on to The Last Final Girl. Category 1, this one absolutely gets an A for this category because it was entirely satirical. The entire thing was a big slasher movie joke, a super meta take on it. This one takes the cake for this category, A. Category 2, Did I care about the main character? I did, but not as much as I did for the other two books. It gets a B. Number 3. For this, I gave it a C. I felt it was a little bit cheesy, so it gets a C. Number 4, plot twist. I gave this one a B because I wasn't entirely shocked, but I like where he took it. And then category number 5, elaborate kills. This one gets an A because it definitely had some interesting kills. When we do the math, which I have done, and hopefully I've done it right. If not, I'm probably screwed for this class that I'm taking. So let's go over this. Final Girl Support Group ends up with a grade point average of 2.95. Final Girls comes out on top with a 3.0. All right, so we've got Final Girls in the lead. And then lastly, we have the last Final Girl. And this one, surprisingly, comes in for the win at a 3.1 grade point average. All right, the last Final Girl is our winner. Denny's excited too. So let me tell you what I rated these. Final Girl Support Group, I ended up giving 4 stars to. I really, really liked this. I don't feel like it is a typical slasher, but I do like that it takes those tropes and makes it into a book that reads more like a thriller to me. It was very fast-paced, and it did add those discussions that I like to see. There were a few things, a few twists that I didn't necessarily agree with, or I think could have been done better, but overall, really enjoyed this book. 4 stars. Final Girls, I ended up giving 4 stars as well. Holds upon second reading. That star rating stays the same. Really, again, enjoyed this. The twists were great. I liked our main character. I liked the baking element. I liked the friendship between the Final Girls and where that leads to. I just thought it was a really good book. From the Riley Sagers that I have read, it's definitely somewhere in the top. Lastly, we have our winner, the last Final Girl. Surprisingly, I gave this one 3 stars. So let me explain myself. This just wasn't my style. It wasn't my style. Like I said, after I read it, I understood that I did gain a lot from it, and I know what he was doing with it, but I think it just wasn't specifically for me, which is why I had to give it 3 stars, because I didn't dislike it, but I didn't like it either. So it's kind of just in the middle for me. Surprisingly, the winner was my least favorite book. I feel like my personal preference is more of a thriller style read. So I felt like I wouldn't have been doing it justice if I didn't come up with this separate scale to rate these on. That's it, folks. Those are the 3 Final Girl books that I read. Let me know, have you read these as well? Have you read any other Final Girl books that you want to mention or feel like I should have read in place of one of these? Do you feel like my grading system was fair? I'm curious to know, because I did my best to make it fair. That was the goal, but you know, good intentions, you know what they say. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. This was a fun little experiment. Let me know if you wanted me to do more experiments like this, and if so, is there a specific category that you would like me to rate? I appreciate you so much. If you haven't already, I would appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and the like button. It does help me out so much. I will see you guys next time with another video. Until then, don't forget that life is short, so read Riley. Cheers and goodbye.